One of the most important steps you can take to prevent ESD damage from occurring when you're working on a PC system is to use what's called a static mat. Now, remember that ESD occurs when there's a difference in electrical potential built up between two objects due to a static charge. Now, when you're working on a PC system, this could be a bad thing. You need to make sure that the static charges between you and in the case are equalized. The best way to do this is to use a static mat. This you see right here is a static mat. Now, a static mat is composed of a conductive surface. This surface you see right here is designed to conduct electricity. If we take an electrical component, such as a piece of memory or a CPU, and set it on this mat, it establishes connectivity between that device and the mat. That way, there's no charge being built up. Any charge that does get built up dissipates between the part and the mat and whatever the mat is connected to. When you're working on a PC system, what you need to do is to establish connectivity between the case and the mat and you. So what we do first of all is take the case and use this little alligator clip right here to connect or ground the case here to the mat. Okay, so we've got connectivity established between the mat and the case. Therefore, no difference in static charge can be built up between the mat and the case itself. However, there's still one more variable in the situation that you've got to be concerned with, and that's you. You need to not be building up a static charge either. So the second thing you need to do is to use a second clip, connecting it to the chassis as well. Now, some static mats will use the second clip coming right off of here. This one actually uses a second wire that we use to connect to a wristband, which, as you see under here, has a little metal plate, and we just connect that to our wrist, and that establishes connectivity between me and the case, and between the case and the mat. When we set things up this way, there can be no static charge built up between me, the case, or the mat. We're all equalized because the current, anything that does build up, immediately gets dissipated through the system. We stay in equilibrium. That brings up a very important point. You need to make sure that this case is unplugged before you start attaching these clips. I'm going to say that again. Before you start attaching these clips, unplug the case. Because we've got connectivity going here, you don't want to be connected to 110 volts, right? Now, this is an issue because there are people in the industry who will try to tell you that it's actually a really good idea to leave this system plugged in while you work on it. They say, well, you know what? It creates a perfect ground. It may be a perfect ground, but I don't know about you, but I do not like the idea of being connected electrically to something that's plugged into the wall. If that power supply were to have a fault or a problem and allow juice to go through into the components which you are grounded to, you could get a really nasty shock, and you can't get this wrist strap off fast enough, and you're going to have some problems. So I'll say that again. Please unplug the system before you attach these grounding cables. In addition, the old power supplies, when you shut them off, they actually had a physical switch that broke the current between the wall and the power supply. Newer power supplies don't do that. Even though the system's turned off, it still supplies current continuously to the motherboard. So if you were to have this case here with a power supply and have it all plugged in and have the system off, you may be thinking, well, I should be safe, the system's off. Well, you're not, because there still is current going through. Granted, on the motherboard side of the power supply, it's DC current, and it probably won't hurt you that much. But if the power supply were to have a fault and were leaking AC current into the system, you would still be in trouble. So, general rule of thumb, unplug the system before you start fooling around with a static mat. So remember, when you're working on a PC system, you need to prevent electrostatic discharge damage. The best way to do that is to invest in a good static mat and use it properly. Also, remember not to have the system plugged in while you're working on it. You don't want to be hooked up to 110 volts through a static mat.